Evening all. As we now start the video by escaping Fulgora, let's talk about Fulgora. That's the logic of my videos, that's how they work. Just go with it. So again, spent a huge amount of time on Fulgora. I think actually it's like a whole day basically playing Fulgora. And what I'm going to do here is show you the result, the end result of it all, because I think actually that's more interesting than like the 8 hours it took to build all this. Fulgora to me represented probably a pretty good challenge. It was something where you have an abundance of resources and you have to find a way to basically manage them. And I thought that worked rather well, actually. I thought it was fun. So what we're showing here is really the end product, which is you go to these planets to create science packs and then ship them back to your laboratories. And I would say compared to Vulcanus, Fulgora was a bit tougher. And this is because if you distill it down, and you know this, but I'm going to tell you things you know because that's how the world is. What we do with trash sorting is you have a very small chance of making a holmium ore unit, nugget, whatever, trinket, whatever the term is. And that little piece is what you need. Everything else is detritus. It's a great word. You should use that in your day-to-day. And that detritus basically is what you use to build your base. So it's things like cogs, wires, things like that. And you can further distill them, or you can just use them. Or as you'll see here, you actually destroy them in what I do. So really the result is that you need holmium to basically make the science pack. You make holmium into a liquid and then you turn that liquid into a plate, and that plate then gets turned into parts, and then that part gets turned into the science pack. So huge amount of work. I mean, this is why I did cut it out. I did do the video for it, but I realized 8 hours is a bit much. Maybe I should do a long play version, but right now I don't want to. I just want to show you the cool crossroady bits where things change, happen, or result in something that's kind of cool. So what I really wanted to do, and this is why I think I've been spending a lot of time making sure that everything's sustainable. So for example, with things like holmium, with things like the superconductor things, I can't remember what they're called, but all of the parts, I've made sure that they're relatively robust. There's enough kind of production there to support them. Now with Fulgora, the issue is that things jam. So I'm going to say now the sorting method that I went with started out well, but and in fact it was brilliant, it worked really well. But as you see here, so we're building our science packs. I mean, we're not kind of going completely nuts with this. We will ramp this up again. And the little kind of super conducting batteries that you create, I'm making enough of them, but I do think this is kind of to get me going. So let's say it takes about 10 minutes to make 1,000 science packs. That's quite slow, but it'll do for now to get me those, the unlocks that you need to kind of get things going. So what I tried to do is build something in terms of the sorting and filtering of all the trash, because that's literally it. You're now managing throughput. And at start, it worked. Then fast forward to about, I don't know, maybe once I'd kind of scaled up to what you see here, so this is kind of the top of the base now, I realized that actually it's struggling now. So things like concrete, so it makes concrete in an incredibly fast way, so quick in fact that I can't manage it, and you see here it's stalling. So this is my sorting system here. Yes, I know it's flawed, I get it, and I know how to fix it. It took me hours to figure it out, but I managed to figure it out, and I now know that I should not have done a top and bottom version of this. And you'll see a bit later on, or maybe even in the next video, I can't remember if I filmed it. I did fix this, but you can see by having kind of a throughput through the middle, and then let's say copper wires is an example there on either side, is the problem, because both recycling machines fail, they stall. And eventually you get to a point where you've just got too much concrete. Weirdly enough, it's actually steel that's my biggest problem at the moment. So really that is a learning bit that I've had, and I love the fact that I'm doing this. So you design something, it works. In fact, it works really well, to the point where I think I've invented something that like no one else has thought of yet. But when I then look at it in a more kind of cognitive way, as you start to put more stuff through it, so as we put more science packs through it, the realization was, yeah, this isn't going to work. Well, it does work, but it jams, and that's the issue. So really trying to figure out how to stop it jamming is the key bit. So really enjoying this. I've got to admit, it reminds me of some of the old mods that I played with Factorio, the one I mentioned before being Mine Everything. I thought that was exceptionally interesting because you couldn't get rid of stuff that easy in that one. So you're looking for anything to make that kind of burns through the resources. So whoever, I know the people that worked on this mod, I mean, they're familiar to the community, I should say. But I do love the fact that they have obviously looked at these mods and thought, well, that's a great idea. There should be some planet that has an abundance of scrap, and it's about recycling it. I do think well, it's just wonderful. I also love the power generation mechanic on this planet as well. So there's no power generation at all other from lightning. Now, I don't know if I'm supposed to go that way because I realised that I have the ability to create as much water as you want because scrap produces ice, which I guess makes sense because this is like a Mars. This planet is equivalent of Mars. And I thought, well, that's cool. So why wouldn't I not put nuclear power here? So I'm toying with the idea. Post in the comments if you have put nuclear power on Fulgora, or what do you do to power your place in Fulgora? Because it does feel like with enough accumulators, I've never had a power issue. I mean, I might have one or two in this video, you'll see, because again, I ramped up everything without thinking about ramping up the accumulators. So everything always is like a bottleneck. What's the next bottleneck that I'm chasing? And so you can see there's accumulators everywhere, but it has worked. Now, the thing is, I have realized that I've made on this base on a very small plateau, peninsula, whatever you want to call it, because I think I run out of space. So I think the next step for this base, when I really want to push to sort of like 1,000 science, maybe a minute, is going to be moving. There's a large area above, and I think that's probably what I'll do next, is move to it. But the way I see Fulgora is it didn't really break me. It got me to a point where I'm like, okay, there's an issue here where there's just too much concrete, things like that. So all I did was then up the production of reinforced concrete, because it uses that as an ingredient, doesn't it? And then anything else, you get to a point, I mean, you'll see hopefully towards the end of this video, and if not, certainly the next one, I just went all in on recycling. So you get to a point where you're like, right, I can't actually use this. I have to just destroy it. So you see at the bottom left here, all of that kind of unit of what, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 recyclers that are kind of at the end of the conveyor belt, that just gets massively ramped up to a point where it's like, well, yeah, sorry, I have to basically destroy everything now because I need more. So the holmium just comes straight from the first moment of recycling. Therefore, I need to upscale that, and also need to upscale the end product of it. So it's just one long line, and you have to upscale the amount of funnel at the front, and then you realize you have to do the amount of funnel at the back. Think of it as laxatives almost, that you're kind of trying to increase throughput. So the point is by making both ends of that tunnel large, maybe that's better for the, I don't know, throughput. That's an image I don't want to think about, but hopefully that makes sense. So it's been an interesting discovery on Fulgora. This does represent the end of Fulgora for me, because I actually have left Fulgora now in this video. Now we'll look next time at ship creation, because one of the things I was very aware of is I keep getting the ships wrong. Literally, it's like slamming expensive equipment into asteroid belts, and I seem to be not losing ships, but very close to. So I actually spent, again, a fair bit of time playing the game, just thinking about what would make, what do you need to make the good, ideal ship? Because the idea, and this is kind of my big thinking idea now, is I want to turn some of the other planets into large-scale production. For example, making things like green chips and red chips. Maybe not red chips, but green chips certainly on Vulcanus makes sense, because there's just an abundance of iron and copper there. I mean, serious amounts. And you could just have a giant cargo ship picking up those and bringing them back to Nauvis. So the Nauvis production of green chips can just stop. Now the bottleneck here, and post in the comments if I have this wrong, the bottleneck of doing that is that you've only allowed one orbital drop center. So that's not going to work really very well, is it, for large scale things like that? The other one is calcite, that thing you need to do foundry work. That I want to import to Nauvis as well and start to have like a huge foundry operation on Nauvis. Now, I don't think that's going to work, is it? Because again, I'm not entirely sure you're going to be able to kind of throughput tens of thousands of units of calcite through that single building. I'm sure you can, but to me that represents a significant bottleneck. And I hope they change that. I hope they make it that you can have multiple drop target centers, because if you can't, it feels as if that's a quite limiting factor. Post in the comments, let me know your thoughts on that, because to me that does feel a bit limiting. Anyway, so back to Fulgora. So I think my kind of journey with this particular place has been trying to create very modular things, and you'll see a lot of what my play style is with this game is just trying to kind of make it look kind of functional but work. And I think that's been a big issue of mine so far, is that I'm not necessarily logically thinking it through. And I'll give you an example. So holmium, you see right there, it's at the top, at the end of the conveyor. It shouldn't be there. It's the primary thing that you're looking to get. So don't waste capacity through the splitters, put it at the front. And this is a wonder of design really, is that you do spend a lot of time trying to figure out things like exactly what we're doing here. And I think as you start to kind of play the game, you start to learn these various things. You start to see actually something like the capacity of the end of the line, scrap production, which is just designed to clear belts. Doesn't matter what it is, just destroy it. That needs, I see here that it's working to a point, but as we start to scale up scrap into the system, it doesn't work. So watch this space. This scrap processing, trash sorting journey is certainly not over, but it works. It's fit for purpose. It's fit for purpose. I always remember that being a big word that we would use in the city, which is, it sounds a nice thing, doesn't it? Oh, it's fit for purpose. That is. It's not. It's an insult in every sense of the word. If somebody says to you your work is fit for purpose, worry, because they're not being nice about it. They're kind of saying, it'll do. Yes, it'll do. It's the bare minimum is what you're being told there. And when it comes to things like the science production, I just wanted to get things like the mech suit. I wanted to get things like the Mark II drones, batteries, things like that, Mark III battery, and so on. There was lots here that I wanted to do, and I think it was just important to get stand up a quick base. You'll hear that a lot in the city as well. Stand up. Let's stand up a team here. Let's stand up a system here. And I think that was my kind of drive, was just to try and get something quickly over the line. What I found, I think, throughout the process of Fulgora is you've got to have more space. I think my biggest mistake, two mistakes actually, was picking a relatively medium-sized island, or plateau, whatever. And the second issue I did was trying to do an ordered power grid. So if you see the way, you probably do it as well, with the large area power substations, you build like a complete covering grid. I wouldn't recommend that, because that limits you. I think actually the better thing to do is individually power each set of machines. I think that's a much better way to do it. Ship design. So next video we're going to look at ship design. I don't like how this works. I think this ship has so many flaws in it. It's not particularly good. What I did is, after this particular video, I went and spent a good number of hours building a couple of tankers. These are just ships that will go between, think of them as the primary supply shuttles between Vulcanus and Fulgora, and all they're designed to do is go back and forth, dropping off and picking up. That's it, and you automate and off they go. And I must admit, I'm genuinely surprised at some of my design, let's say, conclusions from doing that little process. And I'll give you the first one for free. That's a very British thing to say. I'll tell you this for free. The first thing that I noticed was, don't try and make ammo on the ship. Just import it. Where you've got ships that are moving between really established production centres, forge worlds if you will, then just have them import good ammo and have it conveyed to the guns. I cannot stress that enough. Like the amount of effort and time and space it took trying to make the very basic ammo to put into the guns. It did work. Sorry, I won't say it didn't. It did work, but I found it just frustrating as hell. And I think actually the best thing that I ever did was just, you know, supply the ships when they hit your bases. So things like uranium ammo. That is the best ammo in the game. You might as well just load your turrets with that, because it uses less of it as well, because it hits so hard. And to me, that just makes sense. So, you know, post in the comments, tell me if you agree or disagree with that. So what you see here is me setting up the stations now for the research. We don't really need a station, but the way I see it is it may become decentralized at some point. So might as well just build a station. To be honest, the orbital drop center is to the left of the screen right now, so there's no point doing it. Now, I did discover you have to have yet another input into the laboratories, and I was kind of surprised at that, because I don't know why I forgot that that's how space exploration was. You had like 12 sciences, so it took me a bit. So I've sped this up. I sort of realized, yeah, okay, I have to put another series of conveyor belts through here, and I just decided the beacons need to go in this particular one area, and you'll see me now just thread them all in. Oh, this is so therapeutic. This is prime Factorio for me, this is, because it's so lovely to have a problem like this that you then just use belts and things to solve. So hopefully you agree. One of the areas as well that I think when it comes to laboratories is I don't think this is a particularly efficient way of doing laboratories. This is something that I've done quickly just to get things done. I think as we go into the eternal sciences, we're going to completely rebuild this and redesign it. It's okay. I don't know if there's really many more efficient designs to do this, but I don't like the kind of spaghetti belt, so I think I'm going to sort of look at maybe expanding them a bit. I'm also not a big fan of beacons. I like beacons, they obviously do a great job, but to me beacons can be a bit annoying, because there's nothing better. Like, for example, here we've got, what, 30 labs that are acting as if they are 100 labs, for argument's sake, probably more. But I like having 200 labs with no beacons. Now, I know that's not very efficient, but I just like it. That's what I enjoy. I think there's something about seeing that many beacons being used that makes me sort of quite happy. So I think we'll probably redesign this at some point as well. But, you know, this is for the long run. This game, I'm going to be playing this game well into next year, and probably the year after, because I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So hopefully you're enjoying watching videos of it as well. Here I realised as well that all of the speed modules are speed module 2, so they need to be upgraded. But again, this is one of the nice things about this particular game, is that there's so many design choices that you can make, and at any point change. So one of the things I was thinking of is maybe moving the mega base, because I actually quite like Vulcanus, and I think when I can actually build properly across the lava, I'm very tempted to move the entire base to Vulcanus. The only reason I've stayed in this particular place is because the rail network is set as a, you know, proper big city block. But I think actually if I could do a city block on the other planets, which I think you can, then chances are that's going to be my end goal. So I quite like that thought of having, and I think actually just having decentralized logistics as well is cool. So green chips on Vulcanus. I mean, Fulgora, it's probably one of the best resource centers you could have, because scrap turns into things like copper wire. It turns into things like cogs. Now, you know, you could do a conversion of those, or an import of those. I mean, all the way to steel potentially, you know, so there's lots you could probably do here where you could decentralize some of that manufacturing, so you don't have to burden your systems on Nauvis to do this. So lots to think about. I think, you know, at the moment, the next target is going to be Gleba. Now, I don't know anything about, is it Gleba or Gleba, whatever, and I think I'm going to find that I'm going to struggle on that one, because it's it looks like a hellscape, if I'm going to be honest. It looks like there's living things squirming around trying to kill you everywhere, and I've heard of something called pentapods. I don't know what they are, but I have a horrible feeling I might have seen one on the loading screen, and it just terrifies me. So kind of excited. So I think next video what we'll do is we'll probably look at a little bit of shipbuilding, but I think we'll also go and have a look at Gleba and start the process there, because again, there's another science that we've got to go and make, and this is barely really the end of Fulgora, but it starts at least, you know, making the science that we need. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time.